My name is Paul Webala. I'm a wildlife biologist, but also a lecturer, a senior lecturer at Matamara University. I study wildlife, but specifically bats. Coming from an African society, in Africa, there are lots of myths about these very important mammals. Lots of myths, lots of misinformation about the animals, largely because they are nocturnal. They are active at night. So people have no information about them. And people think that perhaps they are just one or two species, yet they are the second most diverse group of mammals. So we're talking about over 1,400 species globally of bats. That's only second to rodents. So they're about 25% of all mammals are bats. Rodents are about 40%. So if you combine bats and rodents, 65% of all mammals are rodent and bats. If you talk about the lions, you talk about elephants, the big five, they're actually in the minority. There are fewer. So because they are nocturnal, people have lots of beliefs that are unfounded in science. For instance, people say they are neither mammals nor bats. You've heard about this all over. They are typical mammals. Typical mammals. They're only true flying mammals. Because one, they don't have feathers. Instead, in fact, the word Chiroptera, which is a scientific name, Greek word for bats, Chiroptera means hand wing. It's a hand whose fingers, fingers, are joined together by a very thin, sturdy membrane. So this is the first digit, the thumb, second digit, third, fourth, fifth. So there are 5 fingers. They are not wings, joined by a very thin membrane, very thin skin between them. So the word Chiroptera, which is a scientific name for bats, Greek word means hand wing. Hand wing. So they are typical mammals with all the characters of mammals. For example, typically, mammary glands. They have mammary glands. They suckle their young on milk produced by mammary glands. They have hair on the body. They have diaphragm. All other groups have no diaphragm. Diaphragm that separates the abdominal cavity from the thoracic cavity. They have 3 inner ear bones for hearing. But birds, reptiles have only 1 bone staples in the inner ear. So they have all the characters of mammals. They are typical mammals. And because of their habit of also hanging upside down, an adaptation for taking off quickly if they are attacked by predators. And because also their knees, unlike ours, flex backwards, ours flex forward. So they hang upside down, they are not active at night, an adaptation to avoid competition because most of them feed on insects. To avoid competition with birds that feed on insects, so they began living at night. So because of those activities of being nocturnal, and because of lot of ignorance, perhaps other than snakes, bats are the most hated group of mammals on Earth. And what we are doing basically is to try and demystify some of those beliefs and tell them the facts about these very important animals in the ecosystem. They play very, very important roles in terms of feeding on others, feeding on vegetable matter, feeding on insects, and also being fed on by animals like snakes, some raptors, some birds of prey. And so if you remove them, then you're likely to cause a cascade of extinction because they are part and parcel of that jigsaw puzzle of the ecosystem. Number 2 is they are so diverse, very, very diverse. In Kenya here, we are talking about 110 species and counting. Recently, we've just described 2 new species of bats in Kenya, plus several more than 10 clades that we are yet to name from Kenya. So they are so diverse. Majority of them feed on insects. 70% of our birds here feed on insects. And a single night or in a week, they're taking out, a single bird can take out thousands of insects. That means they are voracious feeders of insects. So they naturally control population of insects. Therefore, that means that they help farmers, foresters, in terms of controlling naturally, something that a field that never acknowledged, naturally controlling insects without them using pesticides or insecticides, which have negative impact on the environment. Therefore, farmers save millions of dollars annually in unused pesticides, in avoided crop losses because of what the bats are doing, naturally controlling insects. That's number one, which is very crucial. And like I said, if they are colonial, rooted in caves, millions of them, like along the coast or in Suswa here, millions of a single species of bat called Automobs harsonii. It means in one night they're taking out tons of insects. Insects that are pests. Insects that are carriers of diseases like mosquitoes. They're taking out those insects. And therefore, they help farmers and foresters and us in helping control pesticides or pathogens like mosquitoes. Number three is the remaining 30% of bat species are called frugivorous. They feed on fruits. They feed on fruits and pollen and flowers. And by feeding on pollen, fruit bats are able to pollinate plants like the African tree of life, the baobab. The baobab is called the African tree of life because in the savannah, it supports many animals and birds in terms of sources of food, in terms of nests, in terms of roosts. The baobab is 99% pollinated by fruit bats because there are flowers open in the evening and close in the morning. And by the bats, they have some kind of like convolutionary relationship with baobabs and other trees as well, not just baobab, and other plants. The flowers open in the evening and close in the morning, and only bats are able to hover around the flowers, and by feeding on those flowers, they help transport transport pollen from male flowers to female flowers, effectively pollinating them. Fruit bat feeds on lots of seeds of many tropical plants because fruit bats are found in the tropics of the old world, Africa, Asia, and parts of Australia, Indochina. They are not found in temperate countries or even the US or South America. But by feeding on those fruits, figs, figs, avocados, mangoes, and because they are mammals, they carry heavier seeds. And because they feed on wings, unlike many seed predators, they feed on the wing. They take fruits from a fig tree and feed while they are flying around. And in a single night, some species can fly up to 90 kilometers in a single night during foraging. And because they are foraging far and wide, dispersing seeds far and wide, it's a very crucial ecological process of helping in regenerating forests, in helping establishment of vegetation in areas that have been destroyed by humans, cleared of vegetation. They disperse those seeds in those areas, helping in revegetating those areas. And transferring genetic material from one tree to another is a very, very important ecological process. So seed dispersal, very important role that bats play as well. Management of wildlife does not occur in a vacuum. You don't just manage what you don't know. So our research has unraveled or uncovered information about bat species in Kenya that previously people had no clue which species of bats occur in Kenya. And now that information is in the public domain, that also bats are playing very important roles in the ecosystem. Which species are those? Where are they found? And now KWS is able to talk to us about these very important animals that are so diverse, much more diverse than the so-called big five or even birds. So we've revealed information about different species, what roles they are playing in the ecosystem, and why, very importantly, why they are important in the ecosystem. Our research has helped in a lot of communities change negative attitudes and perceptions about bats. We've reached out to lots of communities, and that's typically conservation. We reach a lot of communities through public awareness and community engagement, community outreach programs across the country, to be able to tell people about the fact that these animals are very important, but also to demystify them, demystify beliefs, negative beliefs that these are carriers of disease. Because the truth of the matter is that all animals and different species, not just bats, have thousands of viruses. Most of them not harmful at all. Most of them not harmful at all. So the truth of the matter is that they are not necessarily carrying more viruses than animals. It's just that they have been fingered more. They have been sampled disproportionately compared to other animals. And therefore, we've reached out to different communities, especially in this era of COVID-19, to tell the communities that indeed they are not, because there was that belief that they are indeed spreading. The word there is spreading the virus to people. They are not. Indeed, SARS-CoV-2 is actually being spread from contact, human contact, not animals or bats to people. So we've been able to reach out to communities, not just demystify their beliefs that they are carriers of diseases, but also that they are important in the ecosystem, and that they are part and parcel of the ecosystem, and we should conserve them for the roles they are playing in the ecosystem. Research provides information. Without information, then we are losing a lot of wildlife, because we don't know what is happening. We don't know why they are declining. So if populations are declining, then we have to look for the reasons why they are declining. And that's the essence of research. So research underpins management and conservation action. Without research, then you're just crappling in the dark. There's no life on Earth. There's no life without bats. Basically, there's no life without Earth, because consider this: the food you are eating, the corn, the rice, all the potatoes you are eating, those potatoes will not be there if bats were not controlling the insects. I know we can apply pesticides or what have you, which is very expensive, and they have negative impact on the environment, including by accumulation on other animals as well. But without bats controlling those insects, and they are doing it without us acknowledging it, we will not be having food on our tables. So they are important in that respect, that we should conserve them. Even the wine we are taking, some of them in the winery, some of them are pollinating flowers in the winery. So it's important to conserve those animals, because not because of us, but because they are part and parcel of the ecosystem. Human beings are just one species, Homo sapiens. The other species are also part and parcel of the ecosystem. We have no utmost, prerogative than other animals or other species. We're just part and parcel of that. So we should conserve them, because they are part and parcel of that ecosystem, and without them, there's no life on Earth.